All right, so we're going to start today by going through the notes for order of operations. But before we get into the actual order of operations, and when I say operations, I mean, I don't want to erase that. Operations simply mean mathematical operations, such as add, multiply, subtract, divide. And you may also see something that we call powers. Powers, and I'll explain that in a minute. It has a base and also an exponent. Okay, but our basic operation for math is just add, subtract, multiply, and divide. But powers look different, but it's basically multiplication. Okay, powers and multiplication are basically the same thing. But again, I'll discuss that in a minute. So when we say order of operations, the order in which we add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Okay. Before we start, we need to understand exponential expressions. We need to understand this. So this whole thing here is called a power. And I told you it was basically multiplication, right? 2 is the base of that power, and 3 is the exponent. So a power consists of two things. It consists of a base and an exponent. The base, well, the exponent, let's start with that first. The exponent will tell us how many times we need to use the base as a factor. In other words, how many times do we need to multiply the base? So when I have 2 to the third power, and you write this, you read it as 2 to the third power. That's how you read it. You write it, this 3 tells us how many times to write this base of 2. Base is 2. The 3 is the exponent. Exponent is that little number at the top. It always tells you how many times to write the base or to multiply the base. So basically, multiply base 2 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And we just say 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times that 2, that last 2 right there, equals 8. That's how we know we went from 2 to the third power. It's 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. Again, the exponent tells you how many times to multiply the base. That's all it is. This says write each factor without using exponents. This 2, when I have 7 to the second power, tells me to multiply 7 twice. 7 times 7, which is 49. That's all I do. This 3 tells me to multiply -5 3 times. So -5 times -5 times -5. And I'm writing it without using exponents. 7 doesn't have an exponent. That 7 doesn't have an exponent. And none of these have exponents. They don't have the little numbers at the top, okay? So I'm writing them without using exponents, but I'm also giving you an answer for them. The answer to 7 squared, or 7 to the second power, is 49. The answer to -5, that's red, is -5 to the third power. The answer to -5 to the third power is whatever we get when we do -5 times -5 times -5. Well, -5 times -5, a -5 times a -5 is a positive 25. And positive 25 times this -5, oh, I didn't mean to write it like that. Well, these two have different signs. So got a positive 25 times a -5 ends up being -125. So if I wanted an answer for it, it's just -125. But without exponents, 7 squared is 7 times 7, or 7 to the second power is 7 times 7. -5 to the third power is -5 times -5 times -5. But this is the answer to those. Those are the answers, okay? That's what they are after you multiply them. I'm not going to worry about C because we don't have time to do all these. D means multiply -4 by itself twice. -4 times -4. If I want the answer, it's just 16. So negative times a negative is a positive. Now, E is a little different than D. D, the negative 4 is in parentheses. I can write the negative 4 on both of those 4s. I can write the negative on both of those 4s because the negative is inside of parentheses. Here, this negative is not inside of parentheses, so you got to keep it. Hold on, guys. Hey, I'm making a video for my class. Is everything okay? No, not yet, but as soon as I finish the video, I will. Okay, all right. Love you too. Be careful. Peace. All right, so since you don't see parentheses, you want to keep bringing that negative down. So you're going to keep the negative because it is or isn't. I was about to say it is not. It isn't in parentheses. So it doesn't go anywhere. Here, when you multiply on this one, when you did negative 4 times a negative 4, it ended up being positive 16. But on E, you got to keep the negative because it's not in parentheses. Basically, just bring it down. And then you do 4 times 4. So 4 times 4 is 16, and you keep this negative. It doesn't go anywhere. So basically, when the negative is in parentheses, your answer is going to be negative. All right, let's take a look at some of these. We're going to follow what we call PEMDAS in order to get an answer to these. All right, PEMDAS is like an acronym for order of operations. So I'm going to explain PEMDAS, and I'm going to write it this way, and I want you to write it on your paper like this. Okay. The PEMDAS, the P in PEMDAS stands for do what's inside of parentheses no matter what. If you see parentheses and it's something to do inside of them, then you do it. Say, for instance, if you see something like negative 4 times, let me change that. Negative 4 plus 12. If you see that in parentheses, you do that first. Okay, so like this would give me, that would equal to 8 because it's in parentheses. Okay, and these go in different directions. That's negative. That's positive. You could say that different signs, so I subtract and keep the sign of the higher number. But now if you saw something, just a number in parentheses, you don't do anything with it, okay? Because it's just a number in parentheses. But if you see an operation in parentheses, like add, subtract, multiply, divide, you got to do something with it. You can't do anything with that, okay? There's nothing but a number in there. All right, and E stands for exponents. So if you see something that looks like this, you got to multiply it out. That's something with an exponent. So it's 5 times 5 times 5. And 5 times 5 is 25. Times that 5, we get 125. I just think about 5 quarters make $1.25. All right, so we got that. The reason M and D are in the box is because you can switch them out. Sometimes, and I'm going to tell you what M stands for. M stands for multiply and D stands for divide. But sometimes you can switch them. Sometimes after you've taken care of parentheses and exponents and you're down to multiplication and division, sometimes you multiply before you divide, but other times you divide before you multiply. It just depends on which one comes first. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Okay. All right, so I'm going to give you 2 examples. Okay, so for this one, suppose in your problem you had 12 divided by 4 times 2. Well, in this particular case, you would divide before you multiply because division comes before multiplication in this problem. So you do the one that comes first in the problem. So it's 3 times 2, which would give us 6. But if you saw this, suppose you saw 4 times, I'm just going to make up something, 5 divided by 2. In this particular case, you will multiply before you divide it because multiplication beats division in this problem. It comes before division. So here I would do 20 divided by 2, which is 10. So multiplication and division kind of interchangeable. You got to play it by ear. You do the one that comes first in the problem, okay? Again, sometimes you multiply before you divide, and in other cases, you divide before you multiply. All depends on which one comes first, okay? All right, and then the last two, A stands for add, and S stands for subtract. And a lot of teachers will teach you to add and subtract, and that you can switch those out too, that you do the one that comes first. But I don't teach that. I just teach you to group them. Whatever's left over. Suppose you had this left over. Let's see. Suppose you had that left over. So I've taught you this way. I didn't teach you to go from left to right. You only do that on multiplication or division. When I say left to right, you do the one that comes first, okay? So I didn't teach you to do the one that comes first. I just taught you to add and subtract this way. I just want you to continue to do what I taught you on adding and subtracting. All the negatives will get added together no matter whether they come first or last. And all the positives will get added together. So you're just going to continue to do it the same way. When you get down to adding and subtracting, that's -8, that's -14. And then for the positives, you got 8 positives and 7 positives, that's +15. So what would you do with these two? Well, you would subtract and you would get 1. 1 would be positive because 15 is bigger and it's positive. Or you can say you got more positives than negatives, guys. All right, so the only one I want you to worry about, excuse me. Let me see if I can flip this back. The only one I want you to worry about that comes, whether or not it comes first, is multiplication and division. That's why I have that box around it. Sometimes you multiply before you divide. Sometimes you divide before you multiply, all depending on which one comes first. All right, so we're going to take a look at number 2, and we're going to follow PEMDAS, guys. All right, so here we go. And I'm going to have to pause the video for a second because I'm not feeling well. So it's going to be a part 2 of this video. I'm going to pause it, and I'll come back and pick up with the examples. Okay, guys?